We have a special guest, Jake Julius here. But what would you say your view on Trump is in general? What do you think about Trump?
I would describe Donald Trump first and foremost as a capitalist.
Okay.
How far down is Christian?
Pretty far down, man.
Do you think that women should be in politics at all?
I don't think that women should vote or anything.
I'm thinking about the word husband and the word wife. There's a thing called animal husbandry, breaking the horse's spirit. Similarly, you're doing that for a wife.
Heterosexuality and homosexuality, to me, are both perversions.
If you want to make babies with a woman, then you have to be attracted to the woman.
Sex itself is not of God. It's a falling away from God.
Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Oh. Welcome to Punchie TV.
Welcome to Punchie TV with your hosts.
Welcome to Punchie TV. I am Punchie with your host, Punchie, from JesseLeePeterson.com show. Oh, Joel Friday, the host of the... What am I saying about you? The American Anchor Baby. The host of the American Anchor Baby show. James Hake, a host of the Hake Report. Welcome to Punchie TV. Punchie.
Welcome to Punchie TV. We have a special guest. Some of you guys know of who this guy is. He's very popular, so if you don't, that's surprising. We have Jake Julius here. Jake Julius is host of Rattlesnake TV on YouTube that generates millions of views. You can go check it out. On his reaction videos on topics like politics, religion, relationships, and other stuff, other things, other topics. And Jake also has been on The Fallen State with Jesse Lee Peterson, if you guys have seen that episode of Jake and Jesse, as well as Jesse Lee Peterson radio show, and also on Joel Friday TV's podcast a while back, and we got into like dating and Christianity. Great episode. But Jake is here with us. How's it going, Jake? Welcome to Punchie TV.
Man, thanks for having me. It's good to catch up again.
Right on. We appreciate it. You coming on here. I got a few different things as well as the other guys here that we want to get into.
Wait.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we need the fanfare.
We got a couple things that I want to share with you here, Jake. A couple of topics that I want to get into, get your take on. First things first, the inauguration is on the 20th, January 20th. Was that a Monday coming up?
That's streaming day
That
or
would be-
premiering day.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
that
when
would
this comes
be-
out.
Monday.
The day that it comes out. Donald Trump is getting in there. Really quick, I wanted to ask, what is your view on Trump, and what do you think like the atmosphere feels like that Trump is getting back in office and all that good stuff?
Yeah, it's to be honest, it's like surprisingly quite quiet at the moment. It's like the liberals cried for a day or two, but then it's almost like they've sort of conceded defeat and sort of like gone away with their tails between their legs a little bit, which is interesting. But yeah, like there's not really much crazy stuff happening on the internet and much to cover and much sort of protests or like people thinking that the orange Hitler is back in office.
Right.
There's really none of that happening, which is bad for me because I can't sort of laugh about it on my channel. But yeah, it should be good, man. But I reckon it'll honestly be smooth sailing for the moment unless something crazy happens at the inauguration. But I reckon it'll be a pretty smooth handover.
Yeah, to be honest, it definitely has been a lot more quiet than I expected because the first time around, I think people are a lot more rowdy about him getting in than they are this time around. But I also think this time around, people are actually more on his side than they were before. It's definitely like more Trump supporters that I've noticed, like locally, especially coming from LA, than there was the first time around. But what would you say your view on Trump is in general? What do you think about Trump? What's your opinion about him?
I like his economic policies. I think he's a good economics guy. I think he's quite I would describe Donald Trump first and foremost as a capitalist before anything else. And I would say next he'd be a pragmatist. And then somewhere down the line there, he'd probably be a conservative, but he's not what we'd consider a conservative. He's not what we'd consider a Christian conservative. But he's pragmatic and he's good for the economy, and he'll be better for social issues than Democrats.
And do you pragmatic for the slow people like me who don't know what that means? What is that?
Yeah. It means that he's like practical. He looks at
okay.
issues and he looks at the most practical way to be able to fix them, and he's basically solutions oriented.
Oh, okay.
How far down is Christian to you?
Pretty far down, man. Pretty far
down.
I don't really believe the whole hype of him being some sort of like big Christian. I think that it doesn't really calculate with him that much.
But he said he loves Jesus. And you see him holding the Bible? It's pretty Christian to me.
I don't know, man. He's pro-life. I mean, he's
Choice.
pro-choice in most ways. Yeah. Well, he still is very, very much like sort of leave it up to the states. And I understand that, but that's a very pragmatic point of view to be like, leave it up to the states. I need to get elected. We need to sort of make sure that, we're solutions based about this in terms of what gets us elected. But it's not like a staunch Christian point of view to be somebody who is, I think he's actually pro-choice up until like the first trimester or something, but he's basically saying leave it to the states. And when you say leave it to the states, places like New York have all the way up until the time of birth, women can get abortions, and it's just heinous. So
if you're to be a pragmatic person, to be pragmatic and electable, you can't be Christian. You see what I'm asking?
I didn't actually say he's not a Christian. I would say I think he is a Christian, but I'd say in terms of his value structure, where that sort of falls, I would say that that's actually kind of like a little bit lower down the totem pole than Donald Trump's pragmatism or his capitalist interests. If you think about what Donald Trump is that he's a businessman first and foremost. Like he's somebody who likes the big, the grand, make America great again. And these things are good and they're beneficial for a society. But man is not just a materialist object. We don't just thrive on material alone. We actually have certain like values and core structures, and we have a soul. And I think that there's a big difference between being conservative in the sense of like lower taxes and wanting to sort of have lots of wealth in the country and wanting to sort of decentralize power, and then being a conservative culturally in the sense that you're like really sort of understanding the spiritual dynamics that are at play in the culture, and you're understanding that the cultural issues actually affect the fabric of the society that you live in. And I think that there are a few cultural issues that he just sort of falls short on when it comes to the Christian worldview. But I do think that he is a Christian, though.
Well, let me get
enough.
I wanna get into that. Is that stuff like that he's doing, his hard stance on immigration? The talks are that he's gonna take a hard stance on immigration, cut them off from coming here, but do it in like a serious way. I guess Tom Hardy. Oh, that's the actor. Tom Homan. Tom Homan.
The incumbent border guy.
I was like, Tom Hardy?
I know.
I love Tom Hardy.
Tom Homan is pretty
right?
strict on his
so.
what he plans to do with the border, and also like Trump getting trans people out the military. Do you think that those hard stances, if he takes them, represent like strength and what Christianity should represent, or no?
Yes, I would say so, definitely. But also, you got to remember that Trump has also been in support of the H-1B visas, and the H-1B visa program is something that would almost primarily be beneficial for Indian and Chinese people who want to come to the country. And India is not a Christian country. China is not a Christian country. And an influx of those sorts of cultures would be a negative for the Christian fabric of America. And we've seen this in Australia, even though Australia is quite like a non-religious country. But we have a massive influx of Indian and Chinese immigration to Australia, huge amounts of them. And these people, when they immigrate en masse, they don't tend to assimilate whatsoever. Right. They tend to form cultural enclaves and sort of maintain their own culture within the country. So that's a big problem if there is massive amounts of like people from places like India and China. Now, the border is a good thing, but I would actually say that the Latinos that come in are probably better immigrants than those, because at least the Latinos are generally Catholic. So, but yeah, in terms of the cultural issues, having a stronger military by being a little bit more strict with who comes in and who doesn't, and having like I would say that just men should be fighting in the military. There should be no women in the military. That would be the most conservative stance that you could take because, if you're looking at the sort of sanctity of womanhood, it's not that they go into the front lines of battle or that they go into a war zone. It's that they become mothers and they have families and they reproduce and they go forth and multiply. And that would be their primary vocation in society.
There's different roles that men and women play and a woman's role isn't to be a fighter on the front lines. They're just not physically built that way, and it just doesn't make sense in general, especially when you see it. It doesn't even look proper.
And they end up just crying sexual harassment.
Yeah, there's all kinds of issues that come with it.
Exactly.
All kinds of issues.
I was thinking that today. It was like there's so many women. Like one in three is likely to be sexually assaulted, and I was like, well, they really shouldn't be women in the army in the first place. If you have this sort of environment, like apparently the Israeli IDF is just like an orgy.
Wow, not surprised.
with all of the different men and women there. It's like it's
America
a very
too.
conducive environment to not having sexual misconduct happening.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, that's how it is in the army. I've heard. Your girl goes off to boot camp. That's not your girl anymore.
Ooh.
She's not gonna,
But I feel like we'd agree on a lot, Jake. I feel like we agree on a lot. Like like I said, we agree on a lot. But I feel like you got fooled by the Catholic Latinos. It makes me question. It makes me question how you see Christianity. All in good fun. But the Catholic Latinos, they're so Catholic. They're so Catholic. The Catholic Latinos love abortion. They're the ones who are supporting it the most. You look it up.
Catholic
Latinos love
you're spot on
abortion.
about that. Yeah. I'm in Medellin at the moment in Colombia. And
What are you doing there?
Like 3 or 4.
Get out.
I've
Go
spent the
home.
last 3 or 4 months.
Where in Medellin? Are you
Latin
okay?
America. I'm in Poblado. Yeah, I'm good.
Bro,
I'm just at gunpoint.
Don't leave where you are. Don't leave that little area.
It's a good thing you're not streaming.
I've been robbed twice.
All my friends have been in Colombia have had bad stuff happen to them.
Wow.
But you're right. It's like they're very sort of like nominally Catholic over here, but it's also an extremely sexual culture in Latin America. Probably the most sexually degenerate culture I've ever seen.
They took Christianity and Catholicism and it went down a really weird path where they brought back a lot of these, and I'm talking about the Mexicans right now, but they brought back a lot of these pagan and weird things and tied it up with Catholicism. Too easily fooled,
they
Jake.
have like the festivals of they have like the festivals of the dead, you know what I mean? Like and they worship the skulls and everything. So they've got some sort of pretty degenerate places. But I'd say that having a Catholic base, like when you go to, for example, like Ecuador, I went to the mountains of Ecuador. They're very Catholic in those sorts of more rural places. Like you go there and they all just worship Mother Mary, and they've got just Mother Mary. You'll be walking along a random rural like pathway, and there'll just be like a random statue.
It sounds
of Mother
scary.
Mary there. It is creepy, dude. There's one near Pablo Escobar's prison. I just did a little documentary series about Pablo Escobar's prison that he built, and you go along the escape route that he walked out. And there's just these random like Mother Mary statues.
Wow.
He was a very religious man. Pablo Escobar? He prayed before.
Bless the bullets.
Before
he used to bless the bullets before.
He's
he
like
killed
plata o plomo in the name of Jesus.
Yikes.
Yeah.
But to circle
We
back
went to the church where he used to bless the bullets before he killed people. He'd go and like
bless the
them.
bullets. Anointed bullets? What the
Doesn't it show you how easily you can mistake someone's so-called Christianity versus having it or not? It's so easy to do that. You get a culture and they put up boxes of Mother Mary and suddenly they're pious
religious
people.
Yeah.
No.
That's why you got to be the real deal.
So I was talking about Trump was also good on he was I think good on immigration in general the first term because he cut down on the refugee problem. The refugee resettlement program was another big scam that that was a big problem for a while.
I remember the alt-right and whatever sharing this thing that was going around close to the end of Trump's presidency, how good he was on curbing not just illegal but legal immigration too. And I wish I could find it. Maybe you can add it in post, but it was this Breitbart thing going around and how he reduced legal immigration by a lot. And I've seen this stuff where he talked about H-1B before, like in 2016. There was that famous clip where he's like, I use it too. I shouldn't be allowed to use it though. We should get rid of it. And honestly, just because some tech guys got all hyped up and they don't speak for Trump, in my opinion. Just because they all had this fight about H-1B, I don't think he necessarily speak for Trump. I think he's down to let in some skilled workers, but
We'll wait
It's just
and see.
not fair to totally conclude that he's.
Yeah, the thing is though, you guys have got the O1 visa. I know this like the back of my hand actually, because I'm trying to get a visa to America. So I've looked into all of these different options as to how to get in, right? So one of the ways that I've looked at is the O1 visa, which is for people with sort of like exceptional talents. But if I did that, then I'd have to actually show that I have some sort of exceptional talent. I'd have to get references from people inside the country. Whereas the H1B is a much easier path than that. So if there were people with exceptional talents in those areas and they were really needed in America, they could use the O1 visa.
Cool. One more last thing I want to say, and then I have some other things I want to ask you, Jake, is the way I see it, and I could be wrong about that, and feel free to push back on it, and you guys as well, is that I just think that Trump being in the position that he is, given the last time he was in there, he spoke very freely, he was very boisterous, and it was necessary at the time because, everybody was soft and taking things personal, and here comes this guy saying, like, I don't care, I'm going to stand on what I believe to be true, and kind of fighting back against the Democrats. And everybody loved that, but it also, like, he shot himself in the foot in a lot of areas because the Democrats or the establishment could use a lot of these silly things that he would say, which were true, but maybe unnecessary, that kind of got him in trouble, and they were able to use that against him. So how I see it now is that he's being more wise from my perspective and making wiser decisions, knowing that he's going to have to stay in there and play his cards right so he can actually get stuff done instead of being this same boisterous Trump that I think people want to see. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely dialed down the rhetoric. Like, I mean, if you listen to some of the stuff from 2016 Trump, I mean, the guy's like really putting his finger on some hot button issues and some things that are sort of, that you'd have to be very careful saying to the establishment. And, he's definitely reined it in a lot and reined in the sort of more aggressive rhetoric. And, there's a really good argument to say that that's a really good thing when you're talking about somebody being presidential. But yeah, I think that the main thing that the point that I was trying to get across is not that he's not a Christian. I think he's definitely a Christian, but I would say that he's a politician as well. And in this modern world, if you want to be a Christian, then that would make you like a Christian nationalist. And if you come out and you're directly sort of invoking this sort of idea of Christian nationalism, which is what that is, then you're just never going to get elected. So you have to sort of play the game. And I think that he plays the game. You look at a guy like I'm just going to give you guys a few examples. Vivek Ramaswamy, he's a Hindu. I'd say him and Trump align on a lot of things, very much capitalist and pragmatic and want big and grand and bold. Elon Musk, I'd call Elon Musk a liberal before I'd call him a conservative. He's got a lot of very liberal points of view. He's basically like a transhumanist, wants to put chips in people's brains and climate change and global warming and these sorts of things. You look at Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's come over to the Republican Party, but he's like, he's pro-abortion up until the moment of birth. He says there should be no restrictions. Tulsi Gabbard, she's the same with this and climate change and all these liberals. So you have to play the game and realize that these people, like, they all have their own role and they're all great for bringing over people to the Republican side and to the right wing because, they've got their own supporters and fans and everything. But the question of whether or not they're like conservatives and whether or not they really embody the traditionalism and the conservation of traditionalism that sort of is what that makes a conservative is just a different question. So not saying I think that question isn't a Christian, but yeah. So
you just don't think that Trump it reflects that, in your opinion, to the standard that you would want him to, as far as
no, not necessarily that I would want him to, but I would say that if you're asking where Christianity falls in his sort of totem pole or his hierarchy of values, I would say that in terms of the politician Donald Trump, from what we can see, I don't know what it's like in his personal life, but from the politician point of view, if you just look at his policies one by one, I would say that it wouldn't be as high as capitalism and pragmatism would be.
Fair enough.
That's partly what I like about him, though, because that's how men are. Like, my dad never went to church when I was a kid, but I saw him as like more Christian than my mom, even though my mom had us doing the Jesus Club Fridays and all that stuff. Men are just naturally just about normal life, practical normal life and leading. And that's how I see Trump was, and that's kind of how the Old Testament people were too. like Solomon got along with all these other people who weren't necessarily worshiping the same God.
But were just regular.
too.
They were just regular people.
Yeah, they would work with people who weren't necessarily still worshiping God, but they would still end up sort of glorifying God through it. God too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point.
God compromised with the Israelites at one point in the same way that, like, we shouldn't accept abortion, right? But we're not going to we're not going to force these people who are insistent, we want abortion. Okay, you can have your abortion. It's kind of like how God did with the Israelites wanted a king. He's like, you don't need a king, but you can have a king, and you're not going to like it. But you can have your king. Here's your king.
Yeah, it's almost like not imposing your religious beliefs on the world. But yeah, it does come off very, just to add real quick what James is saying, is he comes off more as a regular guy opposed to this Christian person, this Christian who leads with Christianity. Because I think that also can be, and we've talked about this kind of lightly on my show last time when you came on, is that I think Christianity, when it's put on too heavily, it's off-putting to people. And I wouldn't want somebody in there just preaching all the time. You know what I mean? It's kind of refreshing that we do see, from what I do see of Trump, a regular guy who is not so caught up in the Christian thing, not so caught up in all these other things, but more just being a regular guy. I just like that.
And isn't there something so unchristian about putting something on like that?
It's like a showcase.
Showcase,
it feels not real.
That doesn't sound Christian.
Yeah,
it's become like a culture rather than a reality.
Right.
I think there's a lot of that goes on. A lot of like the sort of virtue signaling. Who's the most Christianist? You know, and like I think you guys kind of agree with me that he is kind of a normal guy, and he looks at the world in a very sort of pragmatic way, as opposed to just being Christian first. So it's kind of like we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, some other things I want to get to here that I thought were interesting. You did a debate. You didn't do a debate, but you did a reaction video to a debate between Candace Owens and Mikhaila Peterson, right? Recently. Yes. And I thought that was interesting because obviously Candace Owens is very strong in her beliefs and in her stance, and she's also very popular, and she's also very opinioneed, you know what I mean? And Mikhaila Peterson, I'm not too familiar with her.
Talking about Jordan Peterson's daughter?
Jordan Peterson's daughter, yeah. She's pretty opinionated as well. I believe she has her own podcast as well, but it was interesting to see the debate. But I just seen a little bit, and I want to play a clip really quick here, just in case the audience hasn't seen it. And then I want to ask you a question about this debate and kind of get your opinion and the guy's opinion here too. So this is from your channel, Rattlesnake TV. This is Mikhaila Peterson and Candace Owens. A brief debate here. Here we go.
Just regarding Elon Musk shifting gears and even speaking about that issue, you are correct. Obviously, I follow UK politics to some degree because of who I'm married to. And I will tell you that it very much seemed to me like he was drudging up this issue because he was getting so much backlash on the H-1B visa. So I don't really know how sincere Elon Musk was when he weighed into that issue at all. Suddenly,
no one's not.
Do you mind if I finish my sentence, Mikhaila? You've just been talking for a long time. Do you mind if I? There's not a time. There's not a time. Do you mind if I finish my sentence?
It's hard to address them all.
Do you mind if I finish my sentence? I feel like I've let you speak.
I mean, a bit, but go ahead.
Everyone's speaking.
Go ahead.
You mind letting me finish my sentence?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mikhaila.
So I thought right off the bat, the little bit that I've seen, obviously Candace Owens makes some smart points. I'm familiar with her. I think that she's a smart lady. But what this felt like to me is just like a cat fight, exactly what you said on your video. It just kind of felt like cat fight. It doesn't feel like they're really trying to get to the truth or even trying to make sense of stuff. It just feels like a cat fight. And the question I asked you, I want to ask you and audience and you guys here is, do you think that women should be involved in politics in this kind of way? Because it seems like with politics being as like divisive as it is, kind of tough, rough, a little bit dirty, boisterous, that when women get involved, their emotions get tied to all that stuff and they start to identify with it and they can't control how they react, and it becomes off-putting, judgmental, erratic. Do you think that women should be in politics at all?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I literally, just before I jumped on here, finished recording a video, and one of the parts of the video is why women are it's almost impossible to find good female debaters. And I'll explain it why, but no, I don't think that women should be involved in politics at all. I'm like pretty as far right as the I can see with that. I don't think that women should vote or anything. But in terms of that, I'd say it's really hard to find women who are good debaters, because when you look at the way that men interact, generally speaking, when we interact with each other in a debate sense, we're kind of conditioned to know that if it reaches a certain level and if we say a certain thing, there could be physical consequences. Whereas women don't have that sort of enforcement in the way that they speak to each other. So they show aggression not through physicality, but through like innuendo and reputation destruction and gossip and all the underhanded, like really bitchy sort of comments that we see. And that's like basically what that debate was. It was like, okay, Candace, okay. And whereas like if a guy says that to you like this in your real life, like there might be a problem. So women just don't really have that. So generally speaking, there tends to be that like always that sort of like underhandedness going on. So it's really hard to find women who don't employ that and who just can stick with logic and stick to the parameters of what makes a civilized debate. Do
you think that it's the threat of violence that tames men from being like that?
I think that the ultimate, if you reduce it down to ultimately what it is, then ultimately it is the threat of violence within men. And that's just the way I think that men tend to organize themselves into hierarchies. As soon as we meet each other, if there's like 5 of us in a room, and it would be the same if there was 5 of us stuck on an island, we'd organize ourselves into hierarchies and into jobs, and we'd basically just coexist. But yeah, I think that ultimately it is the threat of violence that sort of tempers the way that men speak to each other.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, it may be true on some level sometimes, but I don't know if that's true. But you're right that we do kind of organize ourselves into hierarchies, and more often than not, maybe, or a lot of the time, people kind of accept their role. They know that they're not necessarily the leader in the room, or and they know how to be kind of more civilized, and they're less emotional. I don't know. I don't see it necessarily as the violence being the I don't know.
The indicator.
I think it's a little more honest. Yeah, I think it's a little more honest than that. Like I feel like only guys, like it's like men and women, they both say you gotta love each other, right? Love is important. But I feel like only men really are the only fools to really believe that.
Believe in the love.
Believe in the love. You know what I mean? Like like for the sake of the love, for the sake of doing the right thing.
Yeah. So they're governed. So you're saying that they're governed more by this instinctual thing of doing the right thing, opposed to it being
to a degree,
physical.
Yeah,
physical.
To a degree.
Well, I do agree with what you are saying though, Jake. That with women though that they do.
They get away with a lot more. Yeah,
I never heard of it put in that way. It's a good point. Is that they do typically don't escalate it to that point, meaning like it's necessarily not a physical altercation that it gets into. They just go into the rabbit hole of like name calling or like doing it in that way that you explain, which is true, which probably, and women typically are not aggressive in that behavior. They actually prefer to get the thrill of gossiping or name calling, and that's actually more entertaining.
Their tears hold more value.
It's funny, Joel, like we were talking before about like the sort of like the way that Christians present themselves in culture. And I think that one of the really funny things that we see is that particularly if you're on Twitter a lot, you'll see these, what my friend calls them sewing circle Christians, which is all of these ladies who basically use Twitter and use Jesus as a way to gossip on Twitter.
Yeah.
And they'll use Jesus as a way to sort of try and police men's behavior all the time.
Yeah.
And like Twitter is just such an amazing outlet for them to but it's always in the name of Jesus.
Right.
It's always
That's not what a Christian man would do.
Gossip is
Yeah.
exactly.
justify it.
All
They
that, man.
suddenly
It's
know
really
exactly
great.
what a Christian man would be.
Yeah,
funny.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's like their form. That's their weapon. As far as guys, we can use aggression or we can use physical altercation as like our means of like shutting somebody or dominating, but women can't do that. So they
Or
have
at
to
least
use
like
these.
we know it's there. We know
Right,
it's a possibility
right.
if it goes to a certain place. So like
Right.
before we ever get even close to there, we temper ourselves and the things that we do and say. Like if a woman was to say something like to another woman that's absolutely heinous about her family, she's probably going to start crying and they're going to start crying. But likely what she'd do is she'd say something to other people and make up a rumor if she really wanted to like destroy her reputation.
Right.
If a guy does that, and if I hear about that, like I'm confronting that guy in person, and like if it goes to a certain place, there is going to be physical consequences. It's just the way that men work. So I think before we get there, we just wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's another thing too. How much value men and women the mistake we've done in overvaluing the emotions of women. We've really done that. Their tears. That's why when you saw those Congress people, those Tammy Duckworth or whatever, and these no good people. I don't know if you saw this. Pete Hegseth. They're trying to confirm one of Trump's picks, and they got all these evil people trying to ask him about his marriage and ask him about all this stuff. But the reason these women here's the thing about that, they do that because it works. The women's tears and the women's like pearl clutching and men shouldn't act like that works on people. Yeah. And we've given them a lot of value by I saw this post. I saw this guy the other day. He's like a father. And he was talking about how when I see my son whine and cry for stuff, I just want to be tough with him. But when I see my daughter cry and whine for stuff, I want to give her the world. It's like, what?
It's an interesting thing because it's almost like there's this default idea that everything that a lady can do, even if it's unconscious, even if it's subconscious, everything a lady does is precious. So even when she gets mad, it's not a threat to guys, right? It's not a threat to us. So we almost like don't react because we're not feeling anything by it unless they really get evil, right? But other than that, we're just kind of like, we almost kind of see it as non-threatening. But just because we see it as non-threatening doesn't mean that we shouldn't correct the behavior.
And it's a mistake to not see it as non-threatening. You're looking at the devil.
Yeah.
What do you mean non-threatening? Oh, he's a little kid. No, it's the devil.
No, we do have to address it more for sure. What do you think about that, Jake?
Yeah, no, I pretty much agree with everything that you guys just said. But I do think that men do have the instinct when they see their daughter. Like I would definitely, I think, treat my daughter different to my son. Like if they fall over, I'm going to pick my daughter up. But the son, I'm probably going to be like, get up.
What?
You know what I mean? Like you want to instill some like resilience into the son. But I think that there is something to that though, because when you get old, like into life, like there's something very beautiful and sweet about a woman who has retained some sort of innocence into her 20s and everything when she has a husband, being somewhat unsullied by all of the brutality of the world. Yeah. But I think that if a man is hyper aware of that by the time he gets to 30, and if he's sort of traversed those sort of like muddy waters, then he'll be ready for everything. He'll be able to sort of be a really good leader. He'll be able to burden a lot on his own shoulders, but it's not necessarily attractive for a woman. Yeah, these days you get a lot of it because you get these modern women who are like sort of tough,
No, I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying. There is
I want a tough Olga.
Well, there's something nice about a girl who's maintained her innocence because she hasn't been treated like a boy. But I think the point that maybe Nick was trying to make here, which I agree with as well, is that like there's this over like catering, this over spoiling of women that allows that nature to go out of control. Like she can't even touch her chair. She can't even touch the car door. She can't even make her own. And what that is doing is just creating a monster.
I notice for all the faults they may have, I've seen few individuals, very, very few. I've seen them overcome that, or at least a bit. and so that tells me that God treats women the way He treats men if they really want it. So that's how I want to treat my kids a little bit. I like what you're saying, Jake. Though I do really like it.
Well, Nick,
little sweet girls.
Well,
There's something sweet about it.
Would you want your girl? Would you teach your girl to? Would you make your girl box, Nick?
No, I'm not gonna make them box.
MMA.
I'm not gonna make him. But let's say I box though. Let's say I box.
Yeah,
I might box with her a little bit. She might want to get in there a little bit. But no, no MMA. No. But let's say the example of my son fell.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, and my daughter fell. Both of them, I want to react to their falling down the same.
Interesting.
But yeah, no, the MMA thing. No, she's a girl. What are you talking about?
Interesting.
Give her the dolls.
Huh.
It is interesting.
I also think it is though with young women. Like if you think about it from a man's perspective, like this is just not something we ever have to even conceptualize. But imagine being sort of like 14, 15, 16 and living like relatively normal, relatively equal before puberty. You're sort of similar size to the girls and everything, nothing outrageous. But then when puberty happens, if you're an attractive girl, like 16, 17, 18, you start to grow sort of breasts and you start to sort of go through puberty and you start to become a woman. And all of a sudden you've got this power that you realize where people treat you really nicely because you're attractive, and boys will do whatever you want them to do for some reason. And then it's so easy if you're an attractive young woman to sort of take that and to sort of take it to its extreme and to use all of that sort of positive attention and everything to then become somebody of like really poor character.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
yeah.
you do see a lot of that, a lot of women who are just so entitled, but you can kind of understand why it happens. But it's why it's important to have good parents who will like temper that and temper expectations. You know, it's why it's also important to have matriarchal figures, which is something we're so lacking these days, is like women who are older, who temper the expectations of younger women. We don't have any of that these days because all of the women, the older women, are all a product of the 1960s sexual revolution.
Man, that's the thing too, is that women don't have any examples that they can look up to. At least they're very far few. And the ones that they do look up to are like the ones who are like trying to pose as men as well, or trying to be, they say that they are, conservative or Christian or traditional, but they don't show it, right? So I think women really don't have a good example, and then the men are so weak to women today, and we cater to their feelings, or we cater to not wanting to lose them or let them go, and that's a weakness of the men that's feeding that false nature of the woman.
Yeah,
it's true. Beautiful people do have character flaws, full of problems.
Yeah, and then they end up becoming conservative stars on the internet, and it's or wherever else. They want to preach, even if they're not on the internet. They want to preach, and it's a put off. It's a turn off.
Yeah.
All these conservative feminists that are out there, all the feminists LARPing as conservatives, bro. It's a real problem. It's like an infestation.
Man, I'm glad that you're seeing it too, because there's a lot of conservative women out there. That's why I say women in politics. It turns a lot of them into this like military Barbie type of energy.
Yep.
And it's not Christian, it's not traditional, it's not conservative. It's just conservative talking points. And they may be smart, and they may have something that they say that's true here and there, but at the core of it, it feels off. It feels off-putting. And like we see in those videos, they just get catty, and that's not solution-based. That's just debate, arguing.
Ego.
Yeah, ego. Who can win? Who has the better talking points? So,
and they don't
like that.
I don't think they hide their real motivations that very well. Most people are shallow anyways, right? Yeah. It's like even most men are bad debaters. Yeah. And it's the problem with the women and conservative. You notice when they say stuff like, these men today, they don't know what they want. All they're saying is, why aren't they marrying me? Like they're really shallow, and they're not really hiding their true motivations very well. It's not really about the family or whatever true principle they may be talking about. Even most men are like that though, in the conservative space. Yeah. If they have a camera.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
I wanted to ask you something else, Jake. Because you also did you held a debate yourself. So you moderated a debate between Andrew Wilson and Brandan Robertson. Andrew Wilson is a Christian nationalist, he calls himself, and conservative, I believe. Am I correct there on that?
Yeah.
And
paleo conservative and Orthodox Christian.
Yeah. And he debated Brandan Robertson, which JOP also spoke with a couple times in the past on the radio show. And I believe the Fallen State as well, Brandan Robertson. And he's a homosexual pastor. And he believes that homosexuality is good and God is for it and homosexuals can get married. And he's a pastor of a church. And he preaches on stuff like that.
Is he like a skinny white guy?
Yeah.
Skinny white guy.
Yeah.
I have a clip that I wanted to share with that and kind of give my take on that and ask you a couple things in regards to that. But this is from Rattlesnake TV as well. Jake hosted a debate here and of Andrew Wilson and Brandan Robertson. Here we go.
Very quickly, I'll wrap up with this, but so that we can get over to your attack or whatever. So
I don't have an attack.
Here's a couple of questions I have from the biblical stance. Ephesians 5:22 through 33. This is Paul's prescriptions on marriage, as you know. Okay. Wives, submit yourself to your own husbands as you do the Lord. If two gay men get married, who's the wife?
So you're trying to make a descriptive statement, a prescriptive statement. Paul is writing to a general heterosexual context. He's not addressing same-sex marriage relationships, which did not exist readily in his world, so he had no reason to address them. But he was not asked that.
I see. So you don't believe that the idea of marriage is that the man takes the Christ head and the woman represents the body of Christ and the man the head. You don't believe that that's true in marriage?
I don't think it's precisely how it works with male or female either.
Well, how does it work? You're the authority here. Tell me. No, I'm not interested. I want to know, how does it work?
Really quick, what did you think about the debate between them two as you're sitting there watching and listening?
I wasn't really concentrated that much because I was organizing a bunch of things like on the side. I was organizing a bunch of like call-ins to come in later and everything, and constantly talking to my brother and my producer who's just behind me there. So I wasn't really listening that much, but there was a few wild moments. Like there was one moment where Andrew read out the 7 tenets of Satanism to him. And then he said, I agree, 7. And then he pulled it up on screen and the guy didn't even flinch. He goes, yeah, no, I agree with all of that. Like I'm a subversive. So what he is he's basically a woke liberal who uses the Christianity as sort of like a shield, in my view. It's almost worse than being a really like sort of like flagrantly woke liberal to be somebody who is posing as a Christian and in order to subvert conservative Christianity. But I've had my back and forths with Brandan over email and stuff. And it's all civil and everything. But just to give my honest take, that's what I think.
Yeah. I didn't get a chance to watch the full thing, but
the devil is civil though.
Just a few moments that I saw from that debate is that, and I could be wrong on here. You guys push back on this, and you seen the whole debate, Jake, so you can push back on this if you see fit. But it kind of felt catfight-ish too a little bit, except with men, least you're gonna still get some logical points in there, even if they're fighting and debating, right? So they're gonna be sparring, which I don't necessarily always think is necessary. Because let's get to the truth, let's get to the solution. But in that spar, there are good points that are being made, which I did notice. Why do you think, for one, Christians leave the church in general, in your opinion?
Why do I think that they leave the church? I'd say it's a cultural influence, and the fact that the culture moves further away from Christianity, people will move away. And you'd probably see a lot of people who were like nominally Christian, and it was like the cultural thing to do to go to church. But now they just don't really go to church anymore, and they were never really that invested in the first place because it's just not the cultural thing to do anymore. But also I'd say that there's a lot of subversion there as well. There's been a lot of subversion. You look at all the major movements, like feminism from the start was never a positive thing. Feminism has always been a subversion of Christian values. And, liberalism is the same. Marxism is a subversion of Christian values. So it's like they control all of the institutions. But, I'd like to respond to a few things you said there, but go for it.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have added into that.
I think also the church is following the culture too, rather than being the church. So that it's... So it's not even real.
Protestant churches, I would say, are particularly bad like that.
Yeah, like men don't feel welcome at church because it's so woman-ish.
Yeah, soft and weak. And also, there's I feel like people who go, you make a good point in the sense that people who leave aren't genuinely have found anything, right? So they're leaving this culture opposed to Christianity itself. But I think also what plays a part into that is the church and Christians are very judgmental. So a lot of the gays don't like Christianity, or a lot of the gays don't go to the church or whatever, or would like to speak with certain Christians because they come off very judgmental. They come off very like pointing the finger, like you're this or that. And it's off-putting to a person who is, for one, choosing to live a lifestyle that they're living, but also to the person who's lost and confused and need direction, and all they feel from a Christian is like a vitriol and finger pointing. So
and scripture.
Yeah, and scripture. So I think that's a big part to playing it as well. I don't know if you want to add to it that. Or
yeah,
not.
Because how do I put this? It's like there's something about, for example, there's something about finding Jesse's church and stuff and I've heard you say this, so I'm kind of stealing your thunder, possibly, but the toughness of you're evil or you're good. You're either serving good or evil, right? There's something about that is missing in Christianity, and I bet you that's why a lot of younger people take on this whole, gay, what the hell? Get out of here. That's how it used to be. And if you ask me, I don't think you could be gay and Christian. Like, and this is what I mean. Because it's like you've put some other identity ahead of that. Can you be Christian or wanting to be Christian and you still do gay stuff because like you're trying to overcome? That's a different story. And so I don't see that toughness anywhere. But seeing Andrew and Brandan there, I feel like it displayed that shallowness in that like what was said there? What was really said? Andrew just said, but the Bible says, but Paul said this in this book. Yeah. And then he said, yeah, but Paul was just talking to those people. So in an intellectual battle, Brandan is right there.
Yeah. Well, see, that's
and it's like Christianity is not intellectual.
Well,
so that's what's missing.
That's what it kind of felt like a little bit to me is, like I said, maybe some good points are thrown out, but it felt like an intellectual boxing match instead of like honest dialogue about what the truth is. And I feel like a lot of people fall into that thing. But do you think, in your opinion, gays belong in the church?
No, I think that they should go to the church to repent.
Okay, and do you think that gays,
as long as not actively, not saying, look at me, I'm here, I'm queer, and I want to be a part of the church.
Right. Do you guys think that gays should be in the church?
They need the church the most.
Okay.
But essentially what Jake is saying. Yeah, like there's churches that say it's okay, and there's like there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. It's like there's something wrong with everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody must repent.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
especially the gays.
When I think about it as well, like in terms of my own sort of like sexual proclivities, like if people knew half the stuff that happens inside the man's head, then you're just like the biggest sinner ever. So,
right.
Yeah, he's gay, but like the problem is that he doesn't think it's wrong. He's saying it's good to be gay. He's saying it's fine.
Right.
Whereas me, like when I think about my own sexual sin, that's bad, and I need to like repent of that. I need to like try my best not to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the actual debate, though, I think that like you guys, if you looked into it, you might be really surprised about the cultural impact that Andrew Wilson has had on a lot of young guys. Like young men particularly, I think really resonate with that person who's like, you know what, like you don't really need to take this bullshit. You don't need to be told by these sort of cross-dressing men that, you know, if you don't call them ma'am, then they're going to kill themselves. And I'm not sure, sorry if this is a bit TOS, but like you don't need to sort of put up with this sort of stuff. And actually Christianity isn't this sort of like soft, passive, worldview. It's actually you can actually be convicted about it, and if you do your study, it's actually deeply rooted in truth. And what he did throughout that debate, if you guys watched the whole thing, is he systematically dismantled this man's entire worldview to the point where he said that he believes in Satanism, and he also said that God might not be real, Jesus might not be real, and ultimately nothing is really real. We can't know anything, basically. There is no objective truth. It's all just my subjective opinion. Right? So then if you ultimately reduce somebody's worldview to nothing is actually true or real, it's all just my subjective opinion, then you've reduced them to a completely absurd worldview. And if you look at that, and especially if you're a young man, and this is why I think that Orthodox Christianity is attracting a lot of men, where Protestant Christianity is attracting a lot of the sort of Twitter females, is that like these guys are much more sort of convicted in their worldview, and a lot of them are quite tough, and young guys will sort of get on board with that because they've just been completely bombarded with all of this sort of cultural, like this demonic cultural influence, and they want the antidote to that. So yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions about this. This is a really interesting topic.
No, that's true. Is that he's probably and which could be the reason why he's there, a necessary figure in culture right now because of his hard stance, and a hard stance is needed, but it doesn't necessarily mean that a hard stance is the answer, the solution to every circumstance. But maybe
I think we need multiple things. Like, I appreciate you guys, the way you do it. I appreciate the way that Andrew does it. There's different people, and I appreciate the guys who get in there like Trent Horn, who are like really super civilized and but I also appreciate the blood sport debaters who get in there and sort of get their hands dirty. So I think that it's all necessary.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that Andrew may be playing a part in that. And like I said, he's smart, and some things that I've seen of him is like a hard stance. And sometimes that is necessary because you have on the opposite end people trying to let anything go. And sometimes people need to, and I say this metaphorically, be smacked in the face, right? Or punched, metaphorically.
Metaphysically speaking.
Because sometimes that is the wake-up call, or sometimes that's felt in such a way that it's needed for the war to be won. So I don't think that his stance on it is wrong at all. But one thing that I do find with debates sometimes is that we tend to take this stance of like, I'm right, you're wrong, right? And when that happens, when we get into these identities, we stop. Then there's no longer solving any problems or coming to any solutions. It's more so like, I'm going to win or you're going to lose, or you're going to win and I'm going to lose, instead of us come to common ground. I always find that there's people who do evil or who are unconsciously doing evil or identify with things that are evil, but somewhere in there's an objective truth that they're believing onto, but it's distorted with all kinds of lies. And I like to sometimes try to find, well, why do they think that way? Where is the place that we can both agree on that you have such a hard stance on this thing? Because there has to be some truth anyway. I don't believe, maybe I'm wrong, that there's anybody who is just absolutely, unless it's the devil himself, just throwing out just random evil nonsense stuff for the sake of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I'd say that the true, like the disagreement lies in the finer details, though. Generally speaking, most people agree about most things, in terms of the fact that they want people to be able to have food and water and want people to be generally sort of well off and want some level of human thriving. But then the sort of differences in the details of, and this is what debate is. Debate is taking a prompt and a certain prompt and then debating that specific thing. And the idea is to sort of give the most convincing possible worldview. But also, I do think that this is what you've said there is true in so many ways, but also you do have to be kind of careful of that, because I also think that this is kind of how our culture has been subverted. There's, like, just for example, like if there was a sword in the ground, right, and a liberal, a conservative, and a libertarian all walked into the room, I think that the conservative and the libertarian would shake hands and say, let's not touch the sword. And then by the time they turn around, the liberal would have already would have already grabbed the sword and slashed them. You know. Yeah. So the thing is, I generally do actually believe that conservatism and traditionalism is rooted in truth, whereas progressivism is inherently rooted in the current thing, whatever the current thing is, whatever is trendy, and it's sort of whatever is cool for 5 minutes, and it's rooted in actually dismantling the systems of truth. So progressivism, these people don't actually believe in any sort of objective truth. So I think that the further toward them I get, that actually the further away from the truth I get in a way. So whilst it's important to maintain humanity, I think ideologically I don't want to find any common ground in the details. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think more so what I mean is that like there's a time for everything, right? And I think that sometimes we'll be convinced that we need to be this way at all times, and we just strong arm every debate and just like fight for Jesus and be on the side of Jesus. But I think there's also I think that we should be more allowing the moment to dictate how we should respond to these situations. I think obviously debates are good for numbers. Debates are good for a good show. But sometimes two people may be saying a similar thing, but they're so caught up in the debating style that nothing's is coming from it. I'm not saying Brandan is just like this moral guy, but I mean, I bet you if we listen close, there's something in there that is true is what he's saying, and that we can come to an understanding. And I'm not saying that we got to hold hands and all skip in the grass and say, let's just all be friends, because sometimes you got to pull out the sword too and do that. But I don't think every time we have to pull out the sword. And I think that conservatives oftentimes come out the gate against liberals, and liberals really do it against conservatives, always ready for a war. And I don't think that's necessarily necessary.
Yeah, I'm not really too sure about that. I really do believe that when you're looking at Christianity, you're looking at a worldview that is actually that explains the most difficult questions about life and if you look at all the different cultural issues that we're having at the moment, if you actually do refer to the Christian worldview, like you can pretty much solve all of these problems. Like I can't think of one that you couldn't technically solve. Maybe you guys could think of one, but I really can't think of one. And I'm no like Christian scholar or biblical scholar. I'm like pretty like new to it all, but I really do think that it's rooted in some sort of objective truth, and then that actually does get subverted by these sort of cultural issues. And when you have people who are coming in saying like, actually, Jesus would love to see gay marriage, because that's the sort of thing he says. I do believe that the best way to sort of attack that is not to sort of sit there and find middle ground, but to actually forcefully dismantle that. And a lot of the saints throughout history and a lot of the sort of people throughout the Bible were actually pretty robust debaters, even Peter.
I'll tell you, I really liked that passage that Andrew brought up, Andrew Wilson, the Ephesians, about the husband and wife, because I'm thinking about the word husband and the word wife, and I've brought up kind of jokingly what husband means, because there's a thing called animal husbandry. You're like training the horse and breaking the horse's spirit. I don't know if that's what you're doing in husbandry, but you're doing that for a wife. The name itself and marriage itself indicates that there's roles in it, and there's like a real actual, like you said, hierarchy in how men come together. Same with man and woman coming together in a marriage. There's a proper hierarchy in how it's supposed to go. So I love that.
Yeah.
But sometimes with Andrew and with anybody debating, the temptation is to get into this ego battle and just pounce and not let them speak. And it's like what you said, I'm right, you're wrong thing. And I think that's the bigger lie that a lot of Christians fall into, is this pride and anger.
Because the bigger truth, the objective truth to me isn't like some word from the Bible. To me, objective truth is just love, right? Being a love. But sometimes love is going to be aggressive, but sometimes love is also going to be more passive, and not passive in a weak way, but just, what it is, or gentle. A lot of people don't like that word gentle, but it's a reflection of it. So I think that instead of people looking at the objective truth as some type of stance, like, that because people would think objective truth is just truth, right? So anything that
facts,
facts, right? So then now they'll use, this truth is objective. Nobody can deny this. Now they'll use it as a weapon, but it has no love attached to it, and that's actually doing more harm. Sometimes it's better just to not say nothing. Sometimes it's better just to have Brandan, let Brandan have his little gay stuff. You know what I mean? If he wants that, you know what I mean? But there's a time to step up and debate. So I think that the objective truth should just be love, and love will guide us and tell us what to do in the moment, opposed to having some side or stance, is what I'm saying.
What about if it was like a Satanist, like an actual Satanist who's sort of primary goal was to subvert Christianity and was to sort of do the worst thing possible that they possibly could to all Christians, would you still approach that with love, or would you want to combat that?
Well, I mean, love can also be combating as well. Like and that's the problem, is that like the love seems to be missing a lot of times, because it's like, I want to just defeat evil. But then it says in the Bible also to love your enemies, right? So what does that mean? That must mean that we're not to have hate or anger towards things we disagree with. But sometimes love is allowing somebody to do what they do. Because let's just say Brandan and Andrew debate for 5 hours, and Brandan and Andrew breaks down all the biblical wisdom. But that doesn't mean that Brandan's going to stop believing what he believes and doing what he's doing. So sometimes we just got to know when we're just doing it for the sake of winning, or like you said, ego, or whatever the case may be. Case by case.
I do agree, but like I also think that it's important for people to be armed and dangerous in society with good, proper ideas and rebuttals, and to be able to defend Christianity and to be able to defend like against bad ideas, because ideas are so powerful, man. Like, and I like it when I see people who are good debaters and who are Christians and who have a good sort of understanding of the world and who can actually combat bad ideas. And I think that the problem that you're sort of like sort of saying here is that the problem is not with people, when you're sort of not loving towards people, but I have no love for those ideas, and I like to see those ideas combated as much as possible, but obviously trying to will the good of the person as much as possible. Does that make sense?
Not sure. What do you mean by will the good of the person?
So I think that the definition of love, as far as I can see, the best definition is to will the good of the other. So to really actually want the good for that person, whatever that may entail. So if you really will the good of somebody, say for example a guy like Brandan, you want the best for him. You want him to sort of to understand these things. But I don't want the best for those ideas. The ideas that, homosexuality is just fine and that Jesus would love it, I want those ideas to be dismantled and dismantled swiftly. But however, the individual, I would like him to, I want the best for him.
Well, the ideas are just ideas though, right? Like ideas aren't necessarily really anything. They're just ideas that we have. And it's nice to debate these things, but sometimes when you let people live their lifestyle, and I agree, first off, I want to say that I'm not saying that don't fight, don't take a hard stance. I'm just saying that there's a time for it and there's a time not to. And we get stuck into this mindset thinking that we always got to fight now because we're in a time of crazy people doing crazy things, which is true, but doesn't mean every circumstance needs a hard stance. You know what I mean? There's a time where we could just we just let people suffer, and them suffering is what may wake them up, opposed to us trying to cancel out their ideology or try to control if this ideology gets to this person or not. Like, I don't think we should be worried about that, but more so of like doing the right thing in the moment, whether it be to fight or to understand.
Okay, one of the ways that people win is what are the ways that the liberals win, the communists win, the Satanists win, the gays, is they get the conservatives, the Christians, to overreact to their ideas, their evil, dumb, stupid ideas, and make us look bad and look hateful, because sometimes we are bad and hateful, overreacting to their evil. And so we're fighting evil with evil rather than overcoming it with good.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I'd agree, man.
My last thing here, and then we got to wind down.
Let me jump in. I don't think the gays need the churches more than us, more than anybody. I think that the gays are lost in false identity, like the rest of us are lost in like false identities.
That's what I was about to get to. But go ahead.
Yeah, true. And so it's like, I think you just have to be patient with somebody who's blind enough to think that that's what they are.
Yeah,
and let them come to church, but don't let them subvert.
Yeah,
true say.
You know, one thing I wanted to ask really quick here, and then we'll start winding down, is do you think that homosexuality is wrong, in your opinion? Oh, okay, and why so? Why do you believe it's wrong?
Oh, because it's not in alignment with like the nature of human beings and also with God's will for people. The first thing that God told Adam and Eve was go forth and multiply. And the way that you do that is by a man and a woman coming together in union.
Do you think, I agree, do you think that, do you guys think homosexuality is wrong?
Pretty much, yeah.
It seems off.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd say it's wrong for my own reasons. It's just homosexuality, the way I know it, everyone I've seen talk about it, everyone, when they describe it, what it is, it's this self-worship. It's this self-worship, and it's also a misnomer. You're saying you are this sex thing. It just seems it just seems wrong. It seems so. Yeah, I think it seems like a wrong for my own reasons. For those reasons,
those gay Christians. Just a side note, real quick. Sorry.
Yeah.
They said that in the biblical times, homosexuality wasn't considered an identity, but now it is.
Yeah.
And so that they're saying, so this is okay.
Right.
Because in these times, it's seen as an identity, as if this newfangled fake idea of identity is something more enlightened than it was
before. Yeah.
It's more akin to a possession than anything enlightened.
That's an interesting point. Do you guys think that heterosexuality is wrong?
No.
You guys think heterosexuality?
I don't like I don't even like the word though, because that's a word in reaction to homosexuality.
See, right.
And sex itself seems kind of off.
To me, in my opinion, this is my opinion, and you guys feel free to. Well, I don't have to tell you that. I know you'll push back, but I think they're both the same to me. And I'm gonna tell you where the difference comes in, though, is that heterosexuality and homosexuality to me are both perversions, right? Because you think back in Adam and Eve before they did it, before they had sex,
Did what?
Before they had sex. Adam, God rose Adam from the dust, and then Eve from the rib and the dust, right? But they weren't there was no sex actually involved that we know of, right? But this is my interpretation. It didn't come until after the apple, right? Then they started having sex. But sex became a perversion, right? It became a perversion, just like you can overdo it and you can go out of control and do it to a bunch of people. But sex itself is not of God, right? It's a falling away from God. It's away from the natural nature, because if you think about anything that involves sex, it's animalistic. It's not like pure. It's not of love. It's a act that involves animalistic things. Yeah, it's not like cute, nice, or hot.
Sex is violent.
Except when you're
is it
feeling
violent
those.
or is it sexy?
Exact same thing. The very same thing, sir.
But except when you're feeling those emotions, you feel those feelings. It feels hot, sexy, all those things, righteous. But I feel like it's the same exact thing. Both heterosexuals and homosexuals have to overcome this perversion. But for the sake of baby making and for the sake of having a family, God allowed heterosexuality to be done in a proper way for the sake of baby making and preserving life and continuing to, what's the Bible verse? Multiply.
Multiply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think
Be
that
fruitful and multiply, yeah.
Christians can easily fall into the identity of heterosexuality, thinking that this is godly, marriage is godly, and God can be involved in your marriage, but marriage itself is not necessarily a godly thing. It's a thing, in my opinion, two people come together and you guys can have a family and enjoy this like a union where God can be present and it can be nice and enjoyable and all these things, bear fruit. But at the same time, the idea shouldn't be to now let's settle there. It should be like we should still be on our way to overcoming this perversion that is heterosexuality. What do you think about that? Or what do you guys think?
Well, I would say that I would agree with a lot of what you said, but potentially like the definitions are just maybe a little bit off. I'd say that you're probably talking about sex, or you're talking about lust a little bit more than you are heterosexuality. And the way that I view it is just that heterosexuality means that you're attracted to the opposite sex, whereas homosexuality means you're attracted to the same sex, and asexuality means that you're attracted to no sex at all. And it's like, when you say heterosexual, it's not like hetero act of sex. It's hetero biological sex. So you're like female. So you're attracted to females is what it means, rather than being the opposite, which is attracted to men. But in terms of sex and lust, I'd say that, I would put it more in under that camp. But yeah.
Well, that the point that I'm trying to make is that the attraction part is both. See, the thing is what you just said, which is perfect as my example, is that homosexuality is same sex attracted to another, and heterosexuality is the opposite sex attracted to one another. But the perversion is the attraction, and they both share that same word, right? And that's the point I'm trying to make.
I don't think I'd say it's a perversion though, like being attracted. Like if you I think that if you want to make babies with a woman, then you have to be attracted to the woman, because in order to make babies, not to be vulgar, but you need to make your stuff work in order to make her stuff work, in order that you guys can come together, and there needs to be some sort of mutual attraction.
But that's a perversion.
And for your stuff to work, you have to make her your god.
Right? Yeah. That's what I was saying. There's to go off, there's a perversion in there. But there's a perversion in there that becomes possessive, right? Becomes like about feelings, becomes about like this pleasure opposed to I don't know, being in your natural nature. But there's nothing wrong with it. That's what I'm saying, is that there's nothing wrong with being married. There's nothing wrong with doing these things, but we shouldn't identify with it as the standard, because the standard is for us to go back where we came, which is our true nature of like spirit, completeness, perfect peace. And in perfect peace, I can't imagine anybody having desire for pleasure. Why would you need pleasure if you have peace, is the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah. So you don't think there's anything wrong with a husband being sexually attracted to his wife and wanting to have sex with his wife, not for the purpose of procreation?
I think that God, or to use the best word I could think of, God ordained this marriage to happen. Not that it was to be perfect, but for you to it to be allowable, acceptable, under His like grace. So that way you guys can do it with just one person and not be wild and reckless. But the purpose is that while you guys are together, you guys still should be working on overcoming this false nature, so you can be at one with God and your true nature. If that makes sense.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, makes sense, man. Yeah.
Do you necessarily agree or disagree, or just one of those things where you're just kind of like, well, I agree to disagree type of thing?
No, I think it's just one of those things that you'd have to sort of maybe unpack a little bit more and just sort of get to the bottom of definitions and what exactly you mean by certain words and everything. So it'd probably take us an hour. But I'd probably tacitly disagree.
Okay.
But I'd agree with, but only with elements of it in terms of definitions. But it's like sort of semantics, you know?
Nice. Well, I appreciate, man, Jake, I appreciate you coming on and taking the time to come back. You've been here a couple times, but yeah, you were, real quick to come on here. So I appreciate that. Thank you for coming on. Anything you want to promote lastly here before we wrap up?
No, just Rattlesnake TV on YouTube, and you can find all my stuff there. But yeah, I always appreciate hanging out with Joel. And next time I come to LA, which was potentially early Feb or something, it'd be good to come and catch up and if not do some sort of content.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Let us know for sure. We'll look into it and we'll work it out. We'll link up.
And nice to probably speak to you guys as well.
Yeah.
Be careful in Medellin.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My last question before we end. How do we end this?
Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. Hit the button over here. Subscribe over there. Ring the bell over.
I'm not doing all that editing with all this. That's not going to pop up over there.
Ain't nothing popping up. And the people are like, where? Just hit the button. Y'all know what to do. Bye.
But you didn't say to Punchie TV, but I'll put that up. Punchie TV.
I ain't know I was supposed to say that.
You have to subscribe to Punchie TV.
Oh.
But that's fine.
But they know they're looking at Punchie TV.
That's fine.
We'll put that in the edit. That part, that little conversation.
Yeah, put that in there.
You been here with the Burundanga yet?
That's fine.
Have you been here with the Burundanga?
What is it?
Have you met some nice, lovely ladies, but then you don't feel normal, and then you wake up?
Oh, you're like, how did like the oh yeah,
the scopolamine?
Got like some spray. that they spray on.
See, the
tourists
thing
and then
is so
rob them and
they got
stuff.
these either old ladies or like, I need some directions, or the more likely one, it's you're a tourist and it's like you go into a bar and all of a sudden 3-4 women are all over you like, hey, puppy, what do you want? Let me get a drink. You're like, this is the best country in the world. Then you wake up the next day, you're like, what happened? And your money's gone. You got robbed.
Freaking
you got
dignity.
drugged.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't go out or anything, so like it wouldn't happen to me. But there's there'd be a lot of gringos around here that would be.
Yikes.
Man.
No eche papaya. Have you learned that one yet? That's
No,
like
but
the
it means I don't
that's
have-
the Colombian like modus operandi. Never show your papaya, which is the expression just means to never show that you're a mark. Never show that you're vulnerable. No
okay.
eches papaya.
Yeah. No, I
Never
try to
show
keep a pretty
that you're-
steady poker face. But I just go to the gym and then work at my apartment all day. So
Nice.
it's just a nice view. That's why I'm here. It's probably the only reason why I'm here, because it's a nice apartment with a nice view.
Very nice.
Right.
No, it's lovely.
But thanks again, Jake, and we'll be in touch.